Thanks for joining me today on Dirty Fingers, Muddy Toes. My name's Julie, and today we're going to be mixing up soil to start our seeds in. So certainly you can buy seed starting mix at any garden store. I'm pretty sure they even offer organic options for that now, but I have a large scale seed starting situation, so I need to mix up large batches of seed starting soil. Mostly, I had difficulty getting things to germinate year after year, certain things, especially like peppers. And after doing some research and a lot of trial and error and trying lots of things, I've come up with a soil mix that seems to work really great for just about everything that I start from seed. So I'm going to share that with you today on a little bit smaller scale. Some of the things that I use kind of come in big packages and might be more difficult to find on a smaller scale. But if you have some gardening friends, or if you belong to any gardening group, you might see if a few of you want to go in together on these 40-pound bags of things from the garden store and just mix it all up one evening and divide it out amongst you. It's very inexpensive, and you're going to get a lot better quality seed starting soil for your plants. Also, if you're going to the trouble of buying organic seed like I am, and you use organic practices out in your garden, it only makes sense to start your seeds in organic seed starting mix as well, which is what I'm doing here. So let's go get dirty. Okay, so I've just gotten a bowl. I happen to have a big mixing bowl, but you can use a bucket. You can even plug up your sink and mix your soil in there, as long as you wipe it out really well before you run any water in it. And I've gone ahead and kind of separated some things out. I want to show you what it is that we're using here. So on the right there, you'll see a large bag of topsoil. This happens to be organic. That's what I use. If you want to use whatever kind, suits your fancy, that's perfectly fine. But I'm doing organic seed, and I use organic practices, so I always try to buy everything I can organic. I've not used this particular topsoil before, but I actually really like it. It turns out to be pretty fine. And sometimes when you buy topsoil, it's got really large pieces of wood chips in it, where they have just taken organic material like old mulch or various things like that and composted it down. This topsoil is actually pretty fine, and I like it a lot. It doesn't have too many large pieces, and I didn't have to pick a bunch of stuff out of it. And then on the left there, you'll see a large bag of compressed peat moss. And peat moss is what makes up most of the seed starting mixes and potting soil that you will buy at the garden store. It is non-renewable. It comes out of peat bogs. I usually buy just straight peat moss, but they didn't have that for some reason at the garden store, and they only had this particular brand, and it seems to, according to the package, have a mycorrhizal fungus already in it. I use my own mycorrhizal fungus. I'll show you that here in a little bit, but it can't hurt it, I imagine. So that's what they had. That's what we bought. Then in this next picture here, you'll see I use vermiculite, and they do make that in a smaller bag. It's certainly something that you can pick up. This large bag here was about $17 at my garden store. Vermiculite is a mineral product. It both holds moisture and brings air into the soil. So it's a little bit of a dual purpose. It's really great for starting seedlings in, and I use quite a bit of it throughout the season for various things. And then the last thing is sand. And this is just an inexpensive bag of paver sand that I picked up at the local hardware store. It doesn't have to be nice. Like, this stuff is pretty fine. I'll show you when we go to pour it in. You certainly can buy play sand. It's really only about $4 for this bag, and it's only about 50 cents more for play sand. If you don't want to buy a whole bag of sand and you don't have any use for it in any other capacity, maybe you can snag some out of your kid's sandbox. So that's the basics of everything going in here. So back to our pot here, our bowl. So I've already got the topsoil in here, and I just want to show you, this is a really small amount that we're mixing up. And I just want to show you what this looks like. You can see that, it does have some wood chip pieces in it, but they're very, very small. It does look like there's a little bit of sand already in here. And, but if you go through this, I'm not seeing any big chunks of anything. So if I come across one when I'm planting my cells, after I mix this up, I'll just pull it out and toss it off to the side. And then the peat moss is compressed in a big that big container that you saw. And it's pretty heavy. That bag weighs about 36 pounds, and being square, it's kind of cumbersome. This, when I opened it up, I was fine with it having a mycorrhizae fungus in it. But when I opened it up, I found out that it has perlite in it. And perlite is this little white styrofoamy looking stuff that you find in almost every potting mix that you'll buy. And perlite is another non-renewable resource. It is a mineral component, and it's being used pretty extensively now in hydroponics. So it's just getting more and more depleted. But I don't really love it. People add it to their soil, and it's added to potting mixes because it really helps aerate that soil and bring air into the soil. But vermiculite does a fine job for what I need. I don't really like this stuff. Some people swear by it. If you want to use it, that's fine. I just typically don't. It just happens to be in my mix this time. So when you go to break the peat moss out of it, the container, it will be in this chunk. I went ahead and broke this up. When you break it up out of its compressed state, it's very, very light, not heavy like the bag at all. And it's very fluffy, and it's gonna hold a lot of moisture and bring some organic material here. So we're just gonna add, and I put about this much, this is a 4-cup liquid measuring cup, and for our demonstration here today, I just used about a full one of these in topsoil, and then an uncompressed, once this has been broken up, I used about the same amount in there. And then I'm gonna add in a little bit of sand. I'm gonna kind of eyeball that and just see. That looks like it's gonna be just a little bit over a cup. So if you're, going by ratios, it would be, approximately 4 liquid cups of soil, 4 liquid cups of non-compressed peat moss, 1 cup of sand. And then I've got this vermiculite here. And the vermiculite that you saw in the bag is very fine. Sometimes when you look at vermiculite, it will say fine, medium, or coarse. For seed starting, you really want something that's fine. And this brand is also, typically everything that they do is organic. This is a very fine vermiculite. Also a mineral, good for the soil we were talking about. So we're just gonna put some of this in here. I guess I should have measured that for you, but it looks like about 1.5 cups. And I'm gonna mix this up and see how it looks. You wanna mix it really, really well. I like having topsoil in my mix. A lot of people do soilless seed starting mix. I don't care for that. I'm starting seeds pretty early, and I don't want them growing the entire time in just a peat moss vermiculite mixture. Some people do coconut coir. I don't use that. That is a good resource though. And one of these days, maybe we'll do a test on that. But I don't want a really nutrient-rich soil for starting seeds. I want them to be reaching and growing their roots out, looking for nutrients. So we just need something that's gonna hold together well. This actually came out pretty well. So all of these materials are dry. The sand was a little bit wet from being outside and frozen. So this this is just barely damp, really. For all intensive purposes, it's moist. It's dry, but with a little bit of moisture to it. And if it were wet and I squeezed it together, it would stay really well. But being that it's, barely wet, it's just sort of still saying, like, as this clump here, which is kind of what I want. I want it to be nice, light, and airy. And this mixture is going to give me some soil for some consistency and a little bit of nutrition, but not a lot. It's got the sand in it, which is extremely helpful for drainage. And the sand turned out to be the key thing that I really needed. Oh, see, we just found a little piece of plastic from our topsoil. Every once in a while, you'll come across something like that, and you just pick it out. The sand really helps with drainage and was the key factor in getting my pepper seeds to germinate. So I don't really make any soil anymore without sand. And most of your potting soils aren't really going to have much of that in there. So, topsoil, peat moss, vermiculite, and sand are the basic ingredients. If you want to put perlite in yours, you're welcome to do so. If you're going to use perlite, you should know that it is very, very light, but very, very dusty. And the dust from perlite is actually not healthy to breathe. Once your perlite gets wet, it's perfectly fine. but when you open that bag, it'll have all this white powder that comes out of it. You definitely want to be using a mask if you're working very much with perlite. But again, you know, it's not something that I use in my seed starting soil. So that's pretty much it. Get together with your friends, share some bags of soil, mix it all up, have a glass of wine, whatever it is you got to do there, and you're all ready to go. This fits nicely into, you know, fills the containers really nicely, and you're all set. The last thing that I would put in, now I'm not going to do it right now because like I said, this soil is just ever so slightly damp. But if everything were bone dry, I would probably go ahead and add my Mycorrhizae fungus. This is the one thing that we haven't talked a lot about. This is the brand that I use. It's made by Extreme Gardening, and it's called Mykos. It's mycorrhizal fungus, which is a fungus that grows in the soil and has a symbiotic relationship with your plants. So, you know, you put it where the growing tip is. So in a seedling, it's just going right in the same hole as the seed is going. But if you're repotting something, a house plant, or even planting your plants outside, you can put some mycorrhizal fungus in the hole that you're getting ready to put your plant in, and it will start growing. Your plant has a root tip, and the mycorrhizae has a tip to it as it grows, just like any fungus, and it will enter the root tip of your plant. And they form a symbiotic relationship that helps your plant uptake water better, be more drought resistant. It's got better mineral load. Healthier plants produce healthier things for you to eat. They're also more disease resistant. They're more resistant to pathogens. So this is a great product. It doesn't take very much of it. This is the 2.2 pound container of it. I think I got it on Amazon because I couldn't find it locally. I think it was about 26 bucks, something like that. I strongly recommend it. I saw such a dramatic difference in my seedlings, particularly my tomato plants, when I started using this, that I really have used it ever since then. So if this were completely dry, I would sprinkle some in the soil so that when I started my seeds, it was already in there. But since my mix is just a little bit damp and I don't want this to start growing in my mix without any seeds or anything, I'm gonna wait and add this to the planting holes when I plant my seeds at that time. Other than that, you're all set to go. Hopefully this has helped you feel like you could mix up some of your own soil and be a little bit more in control of what you've got going on there. Obviously, we run into little surprises like this sometimes, but it's not the end of the world. It's just not something I would go out and buy and intentionally add to my soil. But like I said, lots of people love it. So that's really a personal preference thing. Hopefully this helps you get a head start and you get great germination rates. So hopefully that has made creating your own soil a lot easier for you. You've learned a little bit about the things that you might want to put in there or things that you might want to leave out, what your personal preferences are. Super easy to do and doesn't make a giant mess. And it's something you can do with your gardening friends and share. Make sure you hit the like button below if you found this video helpful. Subscribe to the channel so you can stay tuned. We're going to be planting some seeds in that potting soil. I'll show you exactly how we do that and my favorite little planting tool. We'll also be checking out the grow room in future episodes and doing some work with the beehives, the garden itself, and probably the chickens. So thanks for gardening with me. We'll see you next time.